Welcome to part 2 of this build video, and today we are going to be assembling this PC. If you have not seen part 1 of this video, please check the link above. And before we start the reassembly of this PC, let's review what we are going to be upgrading to. And before we assemble this PC, let's go over the parts that I will be using for this new build. First up, I will be upgrading to the Threadripper 3970X. This has a base clock of 3.7 GHz with a max boost of 4.5. I will be moving to 4K videos slowly over the next few weeks, and this will help me greatly with my rendering and processing of those videos. I'm also already recording 4K videos on my GoPro, and I do notice a struggle with my current CPU. One thing to keep in mind is that this processor does use 280 watts and more if you overclock it, which makes a good segue to the Waterblock that we'll be using today. And the Waterblock is the TR4 Pro by Watercool. This is the best, if not one of the best, water blocks available in the market for a Threadripper. And the great thing about this block and the great thing about the Threadripper socket is they are compatible with the new and old generation Threadrippers. So any water block you have for your old Threadripper will work with the new Threadripper blocks. And moving on to the motherboard is the Aurous Xtreme TRX40 by Gigabyte. If you have not seen the full review, please see the link above. The reason why I chose this motherboard is because of the layout for the I/O and the insane VRMs available on this motherboard. And for the RAM, I will be reusing it from my old build. It is 128 gigabytes of G.Skill Trident Z RAM, non-RGB. This is a Samsung B die with the cast latency of 14. I do plan to use this up to 3600 megahertz, hopefully. And to help me get there, I have water cooled it. And if you have not seen that video, please see the link above. And for the GPU, I will be reusing the Radeon 7 from my previous build. This is a great graphics card for content creators because of its compute performance. Gaming is decent, though it is not its strong point. I don't advise you buying this graphics card just for gaming. I do recommend the 5700 XT or a card of that class if you plan to only game. And the last thing on the list is the storage. I will be using Samsung Evo Plus drives. I have 3 of them. I have the 2 terabyte for my media storage. I have 500 gigabytes for the scratch drive and 1 terabyte for my boot drive. Okay, with that said, let's move on to the fun stuff. Onwards to the build montage. Okay, and here we are. We are finally done with this build. I've been using this about 1 week already, and I spent most of the time trying to tweak the memory, and the most I can get is 3200. And considering that this is 128 gigabytes of total capacity with 8 sticks, I think that's a pretty good memory speed. I could have gotten 3600, but the latency would be too high for my preference, so I decided to tune it down to 3200 megahertz. The first thing that I noticed is the graphics card. So if you're using this with the EKWB Waterblock, or I think any Waterblock, you're gonna have a bubble on the very top here. And no matter how much I try to purge this little bubble out, there's nothing much I could do. I could only get as much as I could, so this is something I just have to live with. The second thing I noticed is not a defect of the case itself, however, it's the motherboard. In order to get your graphics card out, you need to use something to insert in between the heatsink and the clip. It's not as simple as just using your fingers, so if you have really big fingers, even medium-sized fingers, it won't fit inside. So I had to use a screwdriver to push the tab, or clip in this case, in order to pull out the graphics card. So let's talk about thermals. Under heavy gaming, and in my example is Division 2, I noticed the temperature would be about 42 degrees for this graphics card, and the CPU would be around the same. And the fans would be running about 380 RPMs to 520 RPMs. And that's the biggest reason why I went with the push-pull setup with the large radiator, so I don't have to run my fans at 1000 or above. I can keep it at a low minimum RPM for silent, heavy compute work. Either whether it be gaming or rendering, I want my computer to be silent, and I think I achieved that. Now granted, it is winter here, and it is about 72 degrees during my testing in my room. So the liquid here doesn't get hotter than about 35 degrees Celsius, even though the fans are running in between 380 RPMs and 520 RPMs. Alright, that just about wraps up this video. Thank you so much for watching this video. And if you have not done yet, please hit subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It will help me tremendously so I can keep on doing what I am doing today and sharing these great videos with you. And I will see you next week.